Are you new to ACC and don't know where to start? Do you want to know what car to begin your racing with, or what to do with setups? What is important and what do you need to look out for if you're coming from a different racing game like Forza Motorsport? And why are tire pressures so important in ACC, and how do you set them correctly? I'm AMD Racing and I'm here today to help you with all of that. We will get to more in-depth topics later, but first let's start with the very basics. So, in the main menu, you could of course just go for the career. But not only is it sadly not very good, but it's also very old and to my knowledge hasn't been updated since the game was released. So I would recommend to actually just go to single player. Here you can do everything from hot lapping to practicing and racing against AI. At the top you will have different series to choose from, which will limit the cars and tracks you can select. If you're interested in a specific series, just go for that. Otherwise, I would just select the Open series. Here you will be able to choose every track and car that the game has to offer. You will only be limited by what DLC you purchased, because the game has quite a few now, and some of them are needed if you want to drive a specific car or track. Next is the choice of game mode. You can of course just go for hot lapping, but I would actually suggest the practice mode if you want to just drive on your own. It will give you a better idea of how a car will behave in a race and give you better options to fine-tune your car's setup. If you want to go for a race against AI, Quick Race is your easiest option. Set up everything from race length and time to number and strength of opponents. For opponent's skill and aggressiveness, you will have to experiment a bit with that until you find a setting that works for your current skill level. If you want multi-class racing, this is set up in the bottom here. You can also set up a full custom race weekend if you want to. This allows you to do everything that the career does, so you can just simulate a complete championship on your own. Select the track you want to race on, and at the bottom, set the amount of realism, weather, and assists you want to use. There are presets for everything, but you can also do a complete custom setup. It's completely up to you. Now we come to the all-important car choice. This will heavily depend on what kind of car you want to drive and what you have available to you because of purchased DLCs. Here are my recommendations for beginners to ACC if you want to race GT3s. If you haven't purchased any DLC, the Aston Martin V8 Vantage GT3 is a very solid choice. Its front engine setup makes it quite well behaved, and it has been a staple beginner car for a very long time. Some of the other front engine cars, like the Mercedes or the BMW, are good options as well. Another great choice, in my opinion, is the McLaren 720S GT3 Evo. While its mid-engine setup makes the car rotate a bit more than the Aston, it's still quite well behaved and handles really nicely. You only need to be a bit careful coming out of slow corners, as the raw power of the car can really spin the rear around if you're not careful. If you have the necessary DLC, the Ferrari 296 GT3 is another great choice for a beginner. It's part of the 2023 GT World Challenge Pack and is one of the best behaved mid-engine cars in the game. The amazing electronics of the car also make it very hard to spin the car. You only need to be a bit careful with this one over curbs and bumps. These are of course just my recommendations, and you're free to go with any car you like. Another great choice, in my opinion, is to start your ACC journey in one of the slower cars, like one of the GT4s or the BMW M2 if you have the necessary DLC. They offer a bit more of an easier approach to racing in ACC in my opinion, are still a lot of fun, and can be a nice stepping stone to the faster and a bit more difficult to control GT3s. Once you've made your choice, it's finally time to get on track. But actually, before we really do that, we need to talk about setups. On the setup screen, you have a choice of different presets. These are okay starting out, and it's also something you can learn from if you take a look at the differences. You should go for the safe preset only if you're very new to racing, or maybe don't feel all that comfortable with your input device yet, be that a wheel or a controller. In all other circumstances, go for the aggressive preset. This is most of the time a very decent starting point if you want to learn how to be fast in this game. The wet preset, as the name suggests, is only for if it's raining and most of the time not really necessary. One other option is to find setups online. There are ones for every track and car combo that you can buy, and a few free ones as well. Be careful though that these setups are for the current version, as in 1.9 the physics changed quite a lot. I will link a very good YouTuber who does free setups for almost every car, where you can take a look if you want to. These are most of the time a very good starting point if you don't want to use the aggressive setup. By the way, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know, and I may share some of my own setups in the future. If you now go into your preset of choice, there are a whole boatload of settings to change. Don't be overwhelmed. In the very beginning, you will not need to change much here. I would actually tell you to leave almost everything as is, apart from checking fuel and strategy. Here, reduce fuel load a bit unless you want to drive for a longer period of time. For testing, I usually take about 20 liters, that's mostly more than enough. The other thing here is brake pads. Let's talk about those real quick. Brake pads 1 are what you actually want to use most of the time for both front and rear. Only if your race is more than about 90 minutes are brake pads 2 worth it. Brake pads 3 are what is used for really long endurance races. Think 24 hours of Spa. Number 4s are not really used at all as far as I know. So just change it to 1 for now, back out, and finally get on track. Because the only thing we will now need to dial in is tire pressures and brake temperatures, as these will depend on the car, track, temperature, and your driving. So we can only find out what values we need by going on track and driving a couple of laps to see how the tires and brakes behave when they are hot. Tire pressures are especially important to get right in ACC, as too high or too low pressures will not only make you slow, but also have a negative impact on tire life. Do a couple of laps and get familiar with the car. Get the tires warmed up, and after those couple of laps, take note of your tire pressures and brake temperatures in the display at the bottom. For brake temperatures, just see if the brakes are generally being too cold, so the color going towards blue, or generally getting too hot, so going too much into the orange and red. Go back to the garage and head to the setup screen and your current setup again. Your last readings on tire pressures are also displayed here, as long as you didn't load another setup. Now it's time to do the only 2 adjustments I would make to the setup in the very beginning. Tire pressures for GT3s should be in the high 26 psi range, around 26.7 to 26.9. Increase or decrease the pressures so that they will be in that range when driving. The numbers in the sliders are the pressures when the tires are cold, so they are not really something to rely on. From what I was seeing on track here and what I'm reading from Hot PSI in this window, I had to increase my tire pressures by about 1 PSI or a little bit more all around. Remember how I also told you to take note of your brake temperatures? These are also important to get right, so the brakes are neither too cold or too hot, otherwise they won't function properly. The brake temperatures can be affected the most by the brake ducts, which you can find in the aero section. If the brakes are too cold, close, which means decrease the brake ducts by 1 or 2 clicks, so less air is funneled through them and they retain more heat. If they were getting too hot, open or increase the brake ducts a bit to let more air in and cool them down. Getting more or less heat into the brakes will now also affect tire temperatures, and therefore we need to adjust the pressures again. Go back to the tires page, and for every click you increased or decreased the brake ducts, increase or decrease the corresponding tires by 2 clicks accordingly. Because I lowered the brake ducts in the front by 1 click and in the rear by 2 clicks, I will reduce my pressures by 0.2 in the front and 0.4 in the back. And that's all you need to do for tires and brakes. Get back on track, check tire pressures and brake temperatures again after a couple of laps, and adjust further if necessary. You can see here that closing the brake ducts like I did does mean that the brakes are now retaining more heat and are staying mostly in the green while also not overheating. Tire pressures are also mostly in the correct window and I'm completely fine with it now. Once you are happy with your tire pressures and brake temperatures, go back to the garage and to your current setup to save it. Click Load Save and give the setup a name, where I would recommend to include the ambient temperature you can find in the top right. This gives you an idea of what you would need to change in the setup if you were to go back to the track in different conditions. As a rule of thumb, for every degree of ambient temperature increase, you will need to lower the tire pressure by 0.1 psi and vice versa increase by that amount if the temperature is lower. This will not be 100% correct, and you need to do a couple of test laps to set tire pressures and brake ducts correctly. But this will give you a good starting point. And that's about everything I want to share with you today. I hope you found this video to be helpful if you're just starting your ACC journey. Let me know if you have any questions or if there are any other topics you are interested in. Feel free to subscribe to the channel for more racing content. Check out this video of me driving a multiplayer race in ACC if you're interested. Thanks a lot for watching. I've been HD Racing. See you next time.